Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the lovely violin music you just heard. It was performed by Rowan Gemma. And we would like to welcome you to the next installment of our ongoing series of monthly readings of literature by our local theater ensemble, The Edge. But before we begin our program, here is a word from our sponsor. Hey, Brent, it's my birthday today. Yeah. You gonna come out to the speckled band for a drink afterwards?
I can't, boss, not tonight. I gotta go check out that new band, the Five Orange Pips. Sorry. Liz, you got that whip figured out or what?
John.
Yeah.
Gee,
hello. You're gonna come out, right? For a drink afterwards?
Damien, I'm sorry. I gotta go home and feed the dog, Toby.
That hound?
What?
I thought you gave me your ex-wife.
Oh, no, not Toby.
Hey, now you...
Damien!
Right?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
I can't, buddy. You know, I have a hot date, and I don't want to keep her waiting. See you later, though. I gotta go check on Toby.
So, who's the woman now?
There's something mysterious going on. Andrew hasn't been going to the speckled band. He's been going to Moriarty's. I think he doesn't want us to know about Irene.
Irene?
Mm-hmm.
Irene Sadler?
Uh-huh.
Ooh, hoochie mama.
Lindsay.
darling.
You're gonna come out, right, for my birthday, right? We're gonna have a few drinks.
I'm so sorry, sweetie. I can't because I've got to go see my poor Aunt Violet. She's not well again. And Elizabeth, she has to come with me because I'm so upset.
I absolutely do. I'm so sorry, yeah.
All right, everybody, listen. Places. I made some changes. You've got to look for those. Welcome back. This weekend, we are doing something a little bit different. Our program this month has two parts. Tonight, WEDG is pleased to present the first part of our program, Not According to Doyle, 4 radio plays adapted from Sherlock Holmes pastiches. By the way, a pastiche is a term used when an artistic work imitates the style of another work, and in this case, it refers to stories written by authors other than Arthur Conan Doyle that feature Sherlock Holmes, or a Sherlock Holmes type character. Hence, our title, Not According to Doyle. Since he was created by Arthur Conan Doyle in 1887, Sherlock Holmes has become the most popular fictional detective of all time, and as such, has spawned a host of pastiches. But before we continue with tonight's program, here are some jingles from the Edge Singers.
Do you use Ajax? You should.
Use Ajax,
Ba-ba.
the foaming cleanser.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Cleans pots and pans just like a whiz.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Ajax really polishes as it cleans. You'll stop playing the elbow tax when you start cleaning with Ajax.
So use Ajax,
Bum-bum.
the foaming cleanser.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Floats the dirt right down the drain. So use Ajax.
Pepsi-Cola, everyone's favorite carbonated beverage. Pepsi-Cola hits the spot.
At 12 full ounces, that's a lot. Twice as much for nickel too. Pepsi-Cola is a drink for you. Nickel, 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 trickle, 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 nickel, 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 nickel,
Pepsi-Cola
trickle, trickle,
hits the
trickle,
spot.
trickle.
Yeah. Are you a Chiquita banana?
I'm Chiquita Banana, and I've come to say bananas have to ripen in a special way. And they're flacked with brown and have a golden hue. Bananas taste the best and are the best for you. You can put them in the sea. You can put them in a pie. It's it's impossible to beat them. But bananas like the climate of the very, very tropical equator. So you should never put bananas in the refrigerator. To have bananas that are fully ripe, you must be absolutely sure to take them home and let them ripen in the right temperature. Cha-cha-cha.
We hope you enjoyed those jingles from our sponsors. And now on to our program. The first of our two pastiches this evening will be The Adventure of the Late Mr. Faversham by August Doyle. In the role of Sherlock Holmes, Solar Ponds, is our own station manager, that's my humble self, Damien Licata. And Dr. Watson, his sidekick, that is Dr. Parker, is being played by John McMahon.
Good evening.
And as Lestrade, no, I mean as Constable Mecca, we have Andrew Bosworth.
Good evening, y'all.
Our two important professors from Merck College are Elizabeth McCollum and as Dr. Doyle.
Hello, folks.
And Lindsay Bartlett as Dr. Fessenden.
Hello, all you lovelies out there.
And the role of Hans von Ruder is Eric Bell.
How do you do?
And finally, in a brief appearance by our own assistant station manager, Liz Pennington, she will be playing Mrs.
Good evening, everybody.
That's Mrs. Johnson. And our Foley effects will be delivered by Liz and our own Ren Doyle. In this first pastiche, The Adventure of the Late Mr. Faversham, Detective Solar Ponds and Dr. Parker are so named because in 1928, when Doyle wrote his story, Conan Doyle was not allowing his fictional characters' names to be used by any other author. Doyle's story takes up and solves one of the untold tales in the Sherlock Holmes canon, the disappearance of Mr. James Phillimore. Doyle renames the title character as Mr. Faversham. This play is presented with the kind permission of the August Doyle estate. And now, WEDGE presents The Adventure of the Late Mr. Faversham.
Few of the cases that came before Solar Ponds in the decade beginning in 1919 so fascinated me as the affair of the late Mr. Faversham in May of 1923. The facts of the case were utterly baffling when Ponds first read of it in the news of the world under the heading Amazing Mystery in Strand.
Now, here's a pretty mystery, Parker. Professor Faversham of Merck College walked into his house and disappeared.
There must be some mistake in this report.
Well, that hardly seems likely at first glance. The word into is especially black-faced, and while the matter is treated rather lightly, the fact remains that Faversham's disappearance into his house is unmistakably emphasized.
No doubt there are any number of ways he may have got out.
It does not seem so. Observe, the house was boarded up during the extent of the professor's 6-month leave. His front door, the only entrance not so treated, was under observation. Faversham had returned to London from Scotland and was to spend a 5-day interval in London before completing his vacation in Germany.
Secret passages.
Perhaps. We shall walk over in that direction this evening.
It will certainly do no harm, but I dare say the matter is much more simple than the papers would have it.
That is quite possible, Parker. But at least this gentleman has done us the favor in so radically departing from procedure as to walk into his house and vanish. So many persons walk out of their house and are never seen again. So common an occurrence that it seldom attracts my attention. Unless, of course, its salient features are what would be considered bizarre.
You know, his name is familiar to me, old man. It occurs to me that I have seen it in connection with Lincoln's Inn Fields. A barrister, I believe.
Indeed. Then doubtless he holds classes in law at Mecca College. Aha! I would not be surprised, Parker, if we were not about to be enlightened further on this very matter.
Two visitors to see you, Mr. Pons.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Come in.
Good evening, Mr. Pons. I am Dr. Doyle, president of Mecca College, and this is Dr. Fessenden, likewise of Mecca College.
How do you do? Please, be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Pons. We have come to consult you professionally about a matter deeply concerning our college. A very delicate matter, Mr. Pons?
Dr. Doyle glanced suspiciously at me.
Indeed. Fear not. You may say anything in front of my esteemed colleague, Dr. Lyndon Parker, I assure you. And if you were bent on walking, you might have better come up Southampton Road and cross to our lodgings here on Praed Street, rather than coming up King's Way and along Oxford Street and Edgewater Road, as you obviously did.
How on earth did he know such a thing? That is just... Why, yes, we did come that way. Well, how did you ever know that
Simplicity itself. Your clothes are extremely dusty, and the dust on King's Way and Oxford is prodigious.
Oh, yes. Yes, I see. I told you, Fessenden.
Mm-hmm.
How may I be of service to such distinguished professors?
Mr. Pons, you may have seen the account of the disappearance of Professor Faversham, one of our faculty members.
Ah, yes. Walked into his house and vanished.
Hardly a laughing matter, Mr. Pons.
Ah, but it is. A delicious enigma. But do go on. Tell me all. I am prepared to hear you.
You apparently know the primary facts of the matter. Sir, Professor Faversham has always been a man of most upright character, Mr. Pons. He is highly respected at the college and has a reputation for extraordinary wit and a very pleasant personality. His life has always been very regular, and therefore his strange disappearance is all the more amazing.
Mr. Pons, we cannot help but suspect foul play.
Mm-hmm.
You have someone in mind, perhaps?
No. No one.
Then obviously you have some specific reason for believing that someone has made away with Professor Faversham. May I know it?
Yes, of course. Professor Faversham is our treasurer. For the last year, he has had complete charge of £10,000 of our money. 5 days ago, he returned to London from a 3-month vacation in Scotland. He is on a 6-month leave at present. And on his return, he saw fit to draw our money from the bank. We did not question his motive, confident that his action would be to our ultimate benefit.
When was the money drawn?
Yesterday morning. It was to have been returned today, for Professor Faversham was to leave for Berlin tomorrow morning to complete his leave of absence.
He notifies you that he was drawing out the money?
Certainly. Everything was done in the proper order.
How many people knew of this transaction?
All the tutors and lecturers in the college knew of it. I admit we were rather indiscreet about the matter. And then there are, of course, the bank officials.
You asked no questions of Professor Faversham?
Oh, none. We suggested as a matter of course that he give us some clue to his intention, but
Surely.
he did not do so.
Surely that is an unusual, not to say irregular procedure?
Oh, most irregular, Mr. Pons, admittedly. But you see, we have done it before, and we have never lost anything through any of Professor Faversham's transactions.
Oh, he has a good eye for investments, and in every case previous to this time, his investment had proved a very good thing for the college.
Yeah.
Mr. Faversham is a barrister, I believe?
Why, yes, that is so.
As a barrister, he may have known prominent people in other fields, brokers, perhaps. Is there any possibility that he might have invested your money in stocks?
Well, yes. It has been suggested that Professor Faversham may have dabbled in the market.
Did Professor Faversham spend his London interlude in his house on Slade Street or at an hotel?
Well, that we cannot say for sure. He spent a part of each day at his home, but it is equally certain that he did not spend his nights there.
Oh? Well, why do you say that?
My own home is just across the street from number 27. I saw no lights on at his house at night after he returned. Also, I tend to wake up early, and I saw Faversham several times entering his home at that early hour.
Do you know if at any time he entertained visitors at his house?
Oh, we know of one man of whom he spoke to us, Dr. Hans von Ruder, a professor retired from the University of Bonn.
You saw them together?
Well, we saw von Ruder enter Faversham's home.
Did you now? I take it you want me to find Professor Faversham and the £10,000?
Yes, quite so, Mr. Pons. We would not like the members of the college board to know that we had been in the practice of following so irregular a procedure in regard to our funds. Dr. Fessenden and I are making this our personal concern, and you will have carte blanche. We will cover all your expenses, in addition to your fee.
Very well. I will take the matter up. Mrs. Johnson.
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Pons.
Mrs. Johnson, will you show these professors out, please? I will report to you soon.
Goodbye, Mr. Pons.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pons.
Goodbye.
Yes, goodbye. Come on, Parker. We must go at once.
Right you are, Hans.
Cabby! Cabby!
Whoa! Get in, gentlemen.
To 27 Slade Street, driver.
Whoa! Walker.
Ah, here we are. And there is someone I know. Constable Mecca.
Mr. Pons, I figured you might be on this case. Dr. Parker?
Constable.
Good day, Mecca. A common sort of house, isn't it? One story, stucco.
Like most of the others on the street, Mr. Pons, this one was built by Faversham about 3 years ago.
All boarded up, just as the papers had it.
Yes, for the length of Faversham's leave. A good job, too. He couldn't possibly have got out by any way but this front door.
And he's not in the house.
Certainly not, Mr. Pons. We searched it from top to bottom. No tunnels, no secret passages, nothing. We did look on the theory that we can't afford to neglect any openings, no matter how improbable.
Dear me. If Faversham isn't in the house and couldn't have got out any other way than the front door, then he must have come out the front door.
Right enough.
That is just what he did not do.
No.
No, Professor von Ruder swears that the door was not lost to his sight for a moment. Not only that, but from the time he gave up Faversham as lost, I was here, at the door.
Well, that is most singular. How did it come about?
Von Ruder had been visiting Faversham. When he got ready to leave, he tells us, Faversham kindly offered to walk to the Strand with him and wait there with him until an omnibus came. According to Von Ruder, they came out on the stoop. It was a frightfully wet and foggy night, and Faversham went back into the house to get his waterproof. Von Ruder remained standing on the stoop waiting for Faversham to return. When he did not return, after some minutes, he went into the house and directly down the short hall to the alcove where he knew Faversham kept his waterproof. The coat was there, but the professor was not. All this time, he had the front door in sight. When Von Ruder could not find the professor, he called him and finally came back to the stoop. I was passing, and hearing his calls, I came up the walk where Von Ruder discovered me and related the incident. I instructed him to wait, which he did, and called Inspector Jameson. The door was therefore not out of our sight for so much as a moment.
You admit that the fellow simply couldn't have vanished into air.
Certainly, Mr. Pons, but where did he go? We ransacked the house even to the extent of digging up the basement floor.
Well, one of two solutions presents itself, Mecca. Faversham either went out of this door, or he did not.
I give you my word, he did not go out of it.
Then you may take my word that he never went in.
But Von Ruder insists that he did. He saw him.
What about Von Ruder?
Retired from Bonn in 1921. As far as we know, he has a perfect record. He lectured in philosophy with a part-time in law and logic. He has a string of degrees that would put the alphabet to shame. We wired the university immediately.
Von Ruder is being held, I take it?
Jameson insisted on it. Von Ruder's in a temper by this time, to my way of thinking. He's booked to sail tomorrow, and as it looks now, he won't get away until we find some clue to Faversham's disappearance.
Well, count one for Jameson. He had the good sense to see that there is a serious flaw somewhere in this fabrication, and he's taking no chance of allowing his star witness to escape.
Right you are, Pons.
Fabrication, Mr. Pons?
We shall see, Mecca. We shall see.
Mecca threw open the front door, and we found ourselves gazing down a short hall, at the far end of which was the alcove where a waterproof coat hung in plain sight.
He certainly could not miss seeing the door, could he? Did Von Ruder explain why he didn't go through the house?
Faversham was using only his library, where he had put up a cot for the nights he meant to be in London, since he didn't want to open a bedroom. The door immediately to the right of the front entrance leads directly into the library, and Faversham was not there when Von Ruder looked into it as he came back to the stoop.
And the other doors, what about them?
All locked. I tried them at once before I called Jameson.
Well then, let us just have a look at the library.
The library was a low, dimly lit room. Every wall was lined with high shelves and every shelf filled with books. In the center of the room was an old-fashioned desk table. On it were a few scattered papers and two books, one closed with a projecting slip of paper to mark a place and the other turned face down. Against the shelves to the left of the table was a cot.
The cot has apparently been recently slept in, judging from the rumpled sheets.
Pons spent some minutes examining the cot minutely. I saw a gleam in his eye as he rose and went to the table to examine the books and papers on it.
Ah, here, Mecca. Professor Faversham's passport, dated for tomorrow.
Pons next gave his attention to the books on the shelves, examining each shelf and taking out books and leafing through them. He crossed and recrossed the room and finally returned to his starting point. Then he started all over, taking each book as he came to it. skipping only those he remembered having looked into before. Constable Mecca was getting a little impatient, I could see, nor did I understand what Pons could be possibly looking for.
You might take Parker over the house, Mecca. It will take me some time to finish here.
Certainly. Come along, Mr. Parker.
Mecca, somewhat reluctantly, I thought, took me through the house, and when we returned to the library sometime later, we found Pons engrossed in a volume of German prose, written, as the cover indicated, by Dr. Hans von Ruda.
Will you want to look over the rest of the house, Mr. Pons?
I think not, Mecca. My little examination has been most valuable, and I doubt whether anything found in the other rooms could contribute much more. I'm taking this book with me. It's a text on philosophy by Dr. von Ruda, a presentation copy from the author to Faversham. A gift, I take it, since the inscription is Christmas, 1921.
Was it on the shelves?
No, in one of the drawers of the desk. But I believe I've seen enough.
Have you any suggestions that might help us, Mr. Pons?
I might suggest only that you examine the books in the library. It may lead you to something. Then you might look into the drawers, if you've not already done so. By the way, you've looked up the hotel at which Dr. von Ruda stayed?
Of course. It's the Adelphi.
Indeed. Well, we may call on them. Oh, and Mecca, you might give that bed a closer scrutiny. You'll find, I think, that it's been slept in only once, if that. It looks rather as if it had been staged with the intention of giving that impression. Faversham, however, has been in London 5 days. Dr. Doyle, who lives just across the street in that white-railed house, informs me that Faversham did not spend his nights here.
What do you make of it, sir?
I think it would be wise to discover where Faversham spent his nights, eh, Mecca?
Yes, it might be.
When are you relieved here?
At 7:30 this evening, then I report to the yard before being released for the night.
Well, if it's not too inconvenient, try to get over to 7 Parade Street before midnight. I may have something for you.
Right, sir.
It was already dark when we returned to our lodgings, Pons having gone to Somerset House, and I, at his urging, to the Adelphi Hotel. When we were safely ensconced in our study, Pons took the German book from his pocket and handed it to me.
Take a look at it, Parker. It's rather interesting.
I examined the book. It was bound in black cloth with a large print on the cover. The title in gold leaf lettering was Die Philosophie. It was a ponderous volume of some 900 pages. The title had an inscription, Mit Freudenlichen Gruß, Hans von Ruda, Weihnachten 1923. I leafed through the book in the hope of discovering what Pons had found so interesting, but I confess it eluded me.
Well, Parker, what do you make of it?
At first glance, I would say the book is little used.
Elementary, but still of some significance in view of the fact that von Ruda and Faversham are warm friends, and since Faversham has had the book since 1921, with ample time to go through it, yet several pages are still uncut. You notice nothing else?
Nothing. Why?
No matter. I'll come back to the book later. You went through the house, Parker. What did you see?
Enough to assure me that Faversham couldn't have got out any window or back or side door. Everything is securely boarded up, and no one could go through without leaving telltale marks. And there are no such marks. And Mecca systematically tapped the walls. There just isn't room in the small proportions of the building for anything in the nature of a secret passage. But of course, if there were a secret passage, that would impute a criminal motive to Faversham himself, rather than to some outsider.
Not necessarily. But I hardly expect to discover any secret passages.
Well, there's certainly a flaw somewhere. Professor didn't simply walk into his house and vanish.
Well, that is the story, Parker. Perhaps the flaw is not in the story. We shall see. I've just called the yard and asked to have Professor von Ruder sent up with Mecca when he comes. Until then, let's forget the matter.
And so we did. About 2 hours later, the bell rang and Mrs. Johnson showed in Mecca, followed by a shabby, bent old man who bore all the obvious earmarks of a professor. He was not thin, but his features gave the impression of being wizened and drawn. His eyes were hidden behind old-fashioned green spectacles. On his scant hair, he wore an equally old-fashioned beaver hat, and a long black coat reached below his knees. To cap this almost ridiculous outfit, the German professor carried firmly in one hand a bulging umbrella of indeterminate age. His voice was high and shrill.
Mr. Pons, Dr. Parker, may I present Professor Hans von Ruder.
Come in, Professor. A pleasure to meet you.
Well, sir, I hope you have found what has become of my esteemed colleague. It is certainly not to my liking to be detained much longer.
Especially since your boat leaves tomorrow, eh, Doctor?
Exactly. I don't want to miss it. But, come, sir, tell us, you have discovered something?
Yes, I may say I have. I expect to produce the lost Mr. Faversham before the night is over.
Well, I hope you are right, sir, in which case I trust I will be able to sail tomorrow after all.
To begin with, Doctor, I should like to hear your story.
Again? Okay, well, I suppose I must go through with it. Must you have it all?
All.
Very well. As you no doubt know already, I have been visiting London. I was in Paris and arranged to meet my good friend and colleague, Professor Faversham, at his home directly on his return from Scotland. That was 5 days ago. I came to London, registered at the Adelphi, and that evening went to Faversham's home. He had just got in, and we spent some hours together. It was late when I returned to the hotel, as perhaps the clerk will tell you, if you care to inquire.
Quite so. I have already done so. I am informed also that you left the hotel regularly each day, sometime before dawn. I take it you spent every day with Professor Faversham?
Yes. We were working together. That is, up to last night. I spent yesterday with Faversham. When I rose to go, close to midnight, he volunteered to walk with me to the thoroughfare, the Strand, I believe it is called, where I could take a conveyance. We came out together to the front stoop. There, Faversham left me to get his waterproof coat, which was not far down the hall from the front door. I stood on the stoop to wait for him.
How long did you wait?
I should say not quite 10 minutes. Then I entered the house to look for him. I had the open front door in sight at all times. I assure you, he was not in the alcove. His waterproof coat had not been taken from its hook. He was not in the library. And finally, he was not on the stoop when I returned there. I called him, and my calls attracted the attention of the constable who brought me here tonight. Doubtless you already knew his story.
You say you glanced into the library? Could Dr. Faversham have been hiding in that room?
Oh, impossible, sir. If you have seen the room, you will realize the walls present even expanses of book-lined shelves. The only object at all large enough to conceal someone is the desk. And that is so placed that from the door fully 3 sides of it are visible.
There is a door leading from the library into the inner room. Could Professor Faversham have passed through this?
No, my dear sir. That door was securely locked. Had you taken the trouble to investigate further, you would have seen that it leads into a narrow closet.
Of course, my dear doctor, you realize that there is a flaw of some magnitude in the problem as it is being presented to us.
Indeed, Mr. Pons. Perhaps you would like to suggest that I made myself some magic to bring about my friend's disappearance without trace?
Nothing so crude, my dear doctor. Nothing so crude. But consider the logic of your statements. You say you had the door in sight every moment. This door is the only mode of exit from the house. Yet, after having seen Professor Faversham enter the house and having kept the only usable entrance under observation, you continue to hold that Faversham did not leave his house, in the face of the fact that Faversham is not now in it.
Overlooking your rambling way of putting it, that is what I maintain.
Did you look behind the waterproof?
Yes, I did.
Well, suppose we wish to assume that Faversham had reason to disappear. Suppose he were hiding behind the library door when you walked down to the alcove. If this were true, could he have stepped from the house at the moment when you looked behind the waterproof?
If that were true, why, yes, I suppose he could.
Good. Very good. We seem to be getting somewhere.
At this point, Pons reached over and picked up De Philosophie.
Do you recognize this volume, Professor?
I do. I gave the book to Dr. Faversham as a Christmas gift in 1921.
I gathered as much from the inscription. At what date did you dispatch this gift to Faversham?
I think it was sometime in the first week of December, 1921.
I think that is all, Professor von Ruder.
And Professor Faversham?
I am ready to produce him.
Pons stood up suddenly, and in one quick movement, he leaned forward and snatched the green spectacles from the face of the German scholar.
What?
At the same time that he brought away most of the skillfully drawn lines on one side of the face.
How dare you!
The fellow was up at a bound, and upon Pons, from Mecca collared from behind.
Well, I'll be damned. It's a disguise.
Professor Faversham, at our service. You may arrest him on the charge of attempting the embezzlement of £10,000 of the funds of Merck College.
Faversham said nothing, but his eyes glared at Pons with hate. Pons sat down and drew out his pipe, as casually as if he had done nothing unusual.
Well, Mr. Pons. I knew there was something fishy about this whole thing. You've got him good and proper.
Damn you, Pons. If you hadn't intruded, it would all have worked out perfectly.
My good Mr. Faversham, your scheme was too perfect. Your mind worked 2 paces ahead of the plan. Your first mistake was the book De Philosophie when you dated a second edition, printed in April 1922 as of Christmas 1921. And the second was the matter of your books. Your purging of them was a sure sign that something was being planned. Take him away, Mecca.
Right you are, Mr. Pons. And thank you. Good night, gentlemen.
Got you, Holmes!
Pons, I don't understand. Whatever do you mean about the books, old man?
You remember, Parker, I spent a considerable amount of time in Faversham's library while Mecca was taking you through the house. And what I discovered was that there were no books possessing any intrinsic personal value, gift books, books with other pleasant associations, such as a professor in a position to receive. It was a safe guess that all such books had been permanently shipped away. Certainly the professor on leave would not take them along. Where then were they? And why were they gone?
Yes, I begin to see, old man.
Well, the answer is fairly obvious. Faversham had entrenched himself in the trust of the authorities of the college to such an extent that even now it will be difficult for them to believe in his duplicity.
But how could he have hoped to get away with it? Surely it would have all been discovered eventually.
He hoped to vanish completely, under suspicion of being the victim of foul play, so that he would not be sought, and then later he could turn up somewhere on the continent as a respectable middle-aged man, at that place to which he doubtless shipped his books before he went to Scotland.
And Van Ruda, what of him?
Faversham registered at the Adelphi as Dr. Hans Ruda, whom he knew to have been retired from the University of Bonn in 1921, and whom it would thus be difficult to locate on short notice. He knew inquiry would be made to Bonn, and he was quite safe there. In order to substantiate his friendship with Van Ruda, he obtained a copy of his book and left it for us to see, a kind of circumstantial evidence of a friendship that did not exist. But he inadvertently, no doubt, dated the inscription 5 months before it was printed. As Van Ruda, he spent his nights at the Adelphi, but before dawn left the hotel and spent the days as Professor Faversham, allowing himself to be seen frequently by Dr. Doyle, a dependable witness who lived across the street. Dr. Doyle was allowed to see Van Ruda, and so he could testify to his presence if necessary.
But if Faversham spent his nights at the hotel and returned in the mornings to his own house, wouldn't he return as Van Ruda? Yet Dr. Doyle says that she knew Faversham had not spent the nights there because she saw him enter his house early in the mornings.
Very good, Parker. I see you have learned to pick up these little discrepancies. Faversham, of course, changed into his Van Ruda disguise sometime during the morning. Doyle, no doubt, was at the college in the mornings and returned for lunch, and so would thus be able to observe Van Ruda entering the professor's house. You recall, Doyle saw both Faversham and Van Ruda, but he had never seen them together.
But what about the passport found on his desk? Surely, if he meant to vanish, he would not leave his passport behind.
Ah, that was meant to give us the impression of an unpremeditated departure. Actually, he had gotten 2 passports, one in his own name, the one we saw on his desk, and one in Van Ruda's name, which I have no doubt Mecca will find when he goes through the things at the Adelphi. That is what I needed to ascertain when we stopped at Somerset House.
Aha, that's why you wanted to stop there. Well, it was certainly most carefully thought out. It's a good thing you were on the case, Pons. I doubt our local constabulary would have fathomed so much. I say, old man, I am simply flabbergasted. However did you put it together so quickly?
Simplicity itself, my dear Parker. He made too many slips that a trained mind could not fail to see. For one, he failed to realize that Van Ruda might be held as a material witness. If he had simply decamped with the money, he would have been hounded for the rest of his life. But given up for dead, he would be free to live his own life. And then I laid a little trap for him. When he realized there were suspicions about his story, he seized on the suggestion I made that Faversham had slipped out the door while he, the fake Van Ruda, was peering about in the alcove. He in essence changed his story. Previously, you recall, he had vehemently denied any such possibility.
By Jove, that's right. He was emphatic about it in his first statement. But Pons, there's one other thing. When you were examining the cot, you discovered something. I saw it in your eyes. What was it, old man?
Yes, that was rather amusing. His little maneuver of sleeping on the cot. There is a great difference between sleeping once and sleeping 5 times in a bed, as the sheets and the impressions will quickly reveal to a careful observer. The single impression is consistently clear, the outlines usually quite plain, the sheets rumpled only in the place where you lie. But a number of impressions will produce a blurred and broadened rumpling and outline. Yes, it was clear, as Dr. Doyle had suggested, that Professor Faversham did not spend his nights here.
Well, well, well. You certainly are a scourge to criminals.
You know, Parker, I fancy Faversham might have made a really great criminal. The potentialities were there. It's almost a shame. We hope that you enjoyed the first part of this evening's program. Now, here is another word from our sponsor.
We made it, everybody.
Elizabeth, how about drinks after the show?
Oh, you know, I just forgot. I quit drinking. Don't tempt me. Oh, besides, I told Lindsay I'd help her with her Aunt Violet, remember? Sorry.
Who's she kidding? She drinks like a fish. What is wrong with everybody?
Say, boss, I have to have a word with you. I can't keep doing this radio stuff for free, you know. If I don't start paying me, I'm going to have to leave.
Oh, what, like you got a big Broadway offer or something, huh?
Why don't we talk it over? Drinks. Huh?
I can't do it tonight, boss. I promised my landlady, Mrs. Hudson, that I'd help her clean.
Well, there's nothing so important as trifles.
Nope.
Yeah.
All right, all right. Gather around, everybody. Come on. There's some things I need to go over. We return now to the second part of this evening's performance with Sherlock Holmes Goes West, based on Mark Twain's story, A Double-Barreled Detective Story, which is one of the earliest pastiches written. But first, let's hear a few more jingles.
Are you in need of freshness and fun? Try Double Mint Gum.
Double your pleasure, double your fun with double good double mint gum.
When you're looking for a treat to freshen the breath and keep things sweet, keep double freshness flavor too. Get the gum that's double good to chew.
Double your pleasure, double your fun with double good double mint gum.
Have you got Buster Brown shoes?
Does your shoe have a boy inside?
What a funny place for a boy to hide.
Does your shoe have a dog or two?
A boy and a dog and a foot in a shoe.
Well, the boy is Buster Brown, and the dog is Ty, his friend.
And they're really just a picture,
but it's fun to play pretend. So if boys and girls like you want some fun, get the shoe with a picture of a boy and a dog inside you can put your foot into.
Buster Brown shoes. And now a word from Brill Cream. Brill Cream.
Brill Cream.
Brill Cream.
Brill Cream.
A little dabble do ya?
Brill Cream.
You look so debonair.
Brill Cream.
The gals will all pursue ya.
The lads get the fingers in your hair.
Brill Cream.
A little dabble do ya?
Watch out.
The girls will all pursue ya.
Get Brill Cream today.
Wow, I really love to hear those singers. But back to our final program for today. Mark Twain's a double-barreled detective story, was not well received in 1902. Its satire was perhaps not appreciated because it was written while Conan Doyle was still producing new Sherlock Holmes stories. But now that Sherlock Holmes has become a byword in pop culture, this parody of Holmes may have found its moment. In this segment of tonight's performance, you will hear 3 new voices that were not in the first part of the program. Marilyn Simons is our narrator.
Hiya, folks.
And Brian Belanger is playing Sherlock Holmes.
The game is afoot.
As Stevens, we have Tom Bernstock.
How do you do?
Eric Bell is playing Flint Buckner, and Archie Stillman.
A pleasure indeed.
We also have Elizabeth McCollum as Fetlock Jones.
Hello, folks.
And also Mrs. Hogan. John McMahon plays the role of Riley. And Andrew Bosworth is Hillier.
Evening, y'all again.
And our own Liz Pennington is Peterson. WEDG now presents Sherlock Holmes Goes West.
Around the turn of the 20th century, a lot of folks were rushing out west trying to make a quick fortune in silver mining. Those were wild times, and the miners were a rough bunch. But they had a kind of a rough code of honor and a coarse sense of humor among them that kept most of them from doing harm to their fellows. But I want to tell you about one miner, Flint Buckner, who was different. Flint Buckner was well named.
He had the hide of flint and the meanest and poorest excuse for a human being that ever was.
And the way he treated his boy, an English lad named Fetlock Jones.
Just made my blood boil. Someone's going to murder him someday, mark my words.
And in 1900, somebody did. And that's what I want to tell you about, because that was the day that the most famous detective in the world, Sherlock Holmes, came to town. I guess you could say it all started on one particular day in October 1900. Buckner was savaging his boy again in front of all the miners.
You mangy son of a bitch! Is that any way to hold a drill? Pick it up! I'll teach you, idiot! Get up! You can't lie sniveling there!
Look at that skinflint, boys. Is that any way to treat the poor lad?
Now, I'm going on ahead. You better be at that cabin in 10 minutes. You know what you'll get.
Boy, why don't you leave that damn skunk?
Run away from him. We'll stake you. Skip out to the coast some night.
Oh, I dasn't. Why, he'd just hunt me down and fetch me back, just for meanness.
Well, the poor lad started picking up his stuff, and the miners went back into the tavern. But that lad wasn't at all the wimp we thought him to be. He was planning something.
I'll never leave him, till I leave him a corpse.
That night in the tavern, the miners were just sitting around drinking and talking as they usually did. Buckner was there too, like he always was, and just like he always did, at midnight he got up and left without a look or word to anyone.
There he goes, the regularest man that ever was. You can tell when he's 12 just by leaving him, without looking at your Waterbury.
And it's the only virtue he's got, far as I know.
He's just a blight on this society. Say, does any of you boys ever recollect him asking you to take a drink?
Him?
Oh, Lord.
Flint Buckner.
He's the 15 puzzle, that cuss. And his boy's another one. I can't make them out.
Being a newcomer here, I don't know nothing about him. What's his problem?
Oh, Buckner's a sour creature. We've all tried to talk to him, but he just won't let anybody get next to him. Sammy Hillier here has had a few words with him. If anybody knows his history, I guess Sammy's the one who would know it.
No, I don't know any more than you fellas do. I tried to get acquainted with him, but he just put me off cussing. So I gave up. I can't make him out.
Nor anybody else. And the boy either. He's another 15 puzzle.
And what about the boy?
He's an English lad, about 16, Fetlock Jones. Flint picked him up on a prospecting train. He didn't have any friends or nothing in America and agreed to work for Buckner. I reckon he takes the hard usage he gets from Buckner for the sake of the salary, which is bacon and beans. And that's all he'll say.
And if they are 15 puzzles, how are we going to rank up the other one? When it comes down to A1 right down solid mysteriousness, he lays over both of them.
Easy, you bet.
Whoa, wait a minute, hold on. Who might this number 3 be?
Archie Stillman!
Is he a mystery?
Is he a mystery? Is Archie Stillman a mystery?
Well, you know, here, have a round of drinks on me and tell me about this mystery.
Well, he's a boy, and that's just all we know about him. You can pump him till you're tired, but it ain't any use. You won't get anything. And as for getting at the nature and getup of his main big chief mystery, why, he'll just change the subject, that's all.
And what is his big main chief mystery?
Sight, maybe. Hearing, maybe. Instinct, maybe. Magic, maybe. Now, I'll tell you what he can do. You can start here and just disappear. You can go and hide wherever you want to. I don't care where it is, nor how far. And he'll go straight and put his finger on you.
Nah, you don't mean it, nah.
I just do, though. Weather's nothing to him. Elemental conditions is nothing to him. Dark, rain, snow, fog. He don't even take notice of them.
I'll say. He's got the bloodhound in him, that's sure. He's the very devil.
Some think so. No, I'll tell you a perfectly wonderful thing he done. The other night he...
My child! She's lost and gone. Oh, for the love of God, help me to find Archie Stillman. I've hunted everywhere.
Now, sit down, Mrs. Hogan, and don't worry. Hillier run up and roused him out. He's in number 14. He asked for a bed 3 hours ago, tuckered out tramping the trails the way he's always doing, and went upstairs.
Yes. Now, Mrs. Hogan, don't you worry none. Archie'll find him.
I just don't know what happened. Where could she be?
Now there, Mrs. Hogan. You just rest yourself here till Archie comes. Oh. Here he is now.
Why, Mrs. Hogan, tell me everything. All the particulars.
Well, bless you, dear. Well, there ain't any. I wish there was. I put her to sleep at 7 in the evening, and when I went in there an hour ago to go to bed myself, well, she was gone. Well, I've hunted for you ever since, and you wasn't in your cabin, and I'm that distracted and scared to death, but thanks to God, I found you at last, dear heart, and you'll find my child.
I'm with you, madam. Don't you worry. I'll do my best. Now, first, let's go back to your cabin and see what we can see.
The miners all streamed out to join the hunt, with lanterns winding up at Mrs. Hogan's cabin.
There's the bunk. That's where she was. It's where I laid her at 7 o'clock. But where she is now, God only knows.
Hand me a lantern. I want to examine the floor. Yes. Here's our track. Do you see?
I'll be damned if I can see anything.
Maybe a child's foot could make a mark on it, but I don't see how.
Well, let's go outside and look at the ground now.
Come on, buckos, let's examine the ground.
I've got the direction. Come along. Take the lantern, somebody.
Hey,
He's got the scent. Come on, boys.
Oh, wait here. She gave it up here. Poor little chap. Hold the lantern. You can see where she sat.
I don't see anything.
Me neither. He must have the eyes like a devil.
Oh my God! Oh, here you say. Oh, I kissed the ground where she was, but where is she now then?
Well, I don't understand it. She was here, that's certain. She never walked away from here, and that's certain. It's a puzzle. I can't make it out.
Oh my God! Oh, blessed Virgin! Oh, some flying beast has got her. I'll never see her again.
Don't give up. We'll find her. Don't give up.
Oh, God bless you for your words, Archie Stillman.
Yeah, wonderful performance to find this place, wasn't it? Hardly worthwhile to come so far, though. Any superstitious place would have answered just as well, eh?
What do you mean to insinuate? If you think that...
All right, come everybody, and look at this. It was right under our noses all the time, and we didn't see it.
What? I don't see anything.
Was it Archie?
There's nothing here.
Nothing? Do you call that nothing? There, don't you see? It's old Joe's track. He's got the child.
Oh, God be praised.
Take away the lantern. I've got the direction. Follow!
Why, there's old Joe's track. And there's old Joe himself and the child.
Why, she's asleep.
I find her out yonder about 10 o'clock, very tired, face wet, been crying. I fetch her home, feed her. She was mighty hungry, went to sleep again.
Oh, dear God, thank you, Archie. Thank you all for finding my child.
Hallelujah! These calls for drinks all around. Come on, everybody. Let's go back to the tavern and celebrate.
It was the next day when a stranger came into the tavern. A tall fellow, very dignified and very well dressed. The miners all stared at him nonplussed.
I say, barkeep, a room, please.
Certainly, sir. Will you sign the book and I'll show you up to your room? Right this way, sir.
Say, boys, who do you think that is? I never seen anybody like him around these parts. What tall?
Yeah, who the hell is he? I'm going to take a look at the book. Well, I'll be damned. Look at that. Boys, you'll never believe it. It's Sherlock Holmes, boys.
You're kidding.
Nope. See, there's the signature, plain as can be.
Wow, Sherlock Holmes.
Come on, let's go outside and see if we can get a look at him through the window.
Yeah, let's go.
Look, there he is. See up there at that window? Look at that head. By gracious, that's a head.
You bet. Look at his nose. Look at his eyes. Intellect. Just a battery of it.
And that paleness comes from thought. That's what it comes from. Hell, duffers like us don't know what real thought is.
Boys, it's no use talking. He's a wonder. He's got all the signs of it all over him.
You ain't never said a truer word than that, Hilliard. Say, wouldn't it have been nuts if he'd have been here last night?
Oh, by George, but wouldn't it? Then we'd have seen scientific work. Intellect, just pure intellect, don't you know? Archie is all right, and it don't become anybody to belittle him, I can tell you. But his gift is only just eyesight. Sharp as an owl's, as near as I can make it out. Just a grand natural animal talent. No more, no less, and prime as far as it goes, but no intellect in it, and for awfulness and marvelousness, no more to be compared to what this man does than well, let me tell you what he'd have done. He'd have stepped over to Hogan's and glanced, just glanced, that's all, at the premises. And that's enough. See everything? Yes, sir, to the last little detail. And he'd know more about that place than the Hogans would know in 7 years. I wonder if God made him.
Not all at one time, I reckon.
And there was someone else who observed the entrance of Sherlock Holmes on the scene. Young Fetlock Jones was not pleased.
Uncle Sherlock? Damn! The mean luck of it! That he should come just when... but what's the use of being afraid of him? Anybody that knows him the way I do knows he can't detect a crime except where he plans it all out beforehand and arranges the clues and hires some fella to commit it according to instructions. Now, there ain't gonna be any clues this time. So, what show has he got? None at all. No, sir. Everything's ready. If I was to risk putting it off, no, I won't run any risk like that. Flint Buckner goes out of this world tonight for sure. But wait, Uncle Sherlock will be wanting to talk home matters with me this evening, and how am I going to get rid of him? For I've got to be at the cabin a minute or two about 8 o'clock. Oh, this is awkward. I know. We'll go for a walk, and I'll leave him in the road for a minute so that he won't see what it is that I do. The best way to throw a detective off the track anyway is to have him along when you are preparing the thing. Yes, that's the safest. I'll take him with me.
And later that night, Sherlock and his nephew were walking past Flint Buckner's cabin.
Stop here in the road a moment, Uncle, while I run to my cabin. I won't be gone a minute. Oh, do you have a...
Jones asked his uncle for something, which Sherlock furnished. Then Jones disappeared for a moment, returning quickly. They resumed their walk, eventually arriving at the tavern.
Hey, all right, boys. Pick it up.
Uncle Sherlock's got some work to do, gentlemen. That'll keep him till 12 or 1, but he'll be down again then, or earlier if he can, and hopes some of you will be left to take a drink with him.
By George, he's just a duke, boys. 3 cheers for Sherlock Holmes, the greatest man that ever lived.
What did you get me into that engagement for?
Well, I reckon you don't want to be unpopular, do you, Uncle? Well then, don't you put on any exclusiveness in a mining camp, that's all. The boys admire you, but if you was to leave without taking a drink with them, they'd set you down for a snob. And besides, you said you had home talk enough in stock to keep us up and at it half the night.
Later, at midnight, Jones was standing outside the tavern and watching Buckner go by.
Goodbye. Goodbye for good, Flint Buckner. You're taking your last walk, friend. From now to 1 is an hour. We'll spend it with the boys. It's good for the alibi.
Hey!
Gentlemen, your health.
Mr. Holmes.
Cheers,
Mr. Holmes, tell us about your cases and how you do it.
With pleasure, gentlemen. Now, the most interesting case I ever had.
The talk went on into the evening as Sherlock held forth, talking about his past triumphs.
Here's to Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the greatest.
Hey, what's that? Something's blown up.
It's away down the gorge. I saw the flash.
Come on, let's go to the gorge and see what's up.
Why, it's Buckner's cabin.
But where is he?
Here he is. Over here, boys. Oh, his body's crushed.
Flint Buckner was indeed dead. The body was taken back to town. The next day, there was an inquest. Stevens acted as foreman of the jury.
The finding of this here jury is that the deceased came to his death by his own act, or some other person, or persons unknown to this jury, not leaving any family or similar effects behind, but his cabin, which was blown away, and God have mercy on his soul. Amen.
Amen.
Gentlemen, I think there is something very unsavory to be discovered here.
Why, what do you mean?
Obviously, there's been foul play. I shall return to the scene of the crime.
I'm coming.
All right, let's go.
The miners all followed Sherlock Holmes back to the blown-up cabin. He moved about with a measuring tape, his nephew holding a lantern, picked up various objects, a rag, a splinter, a pinch of earth. He used a pocket compass to get the lay of the land, looked at his watch, took the altitude and the temperature. The miners watched it all with awe.
It is finished. Shall we return, gentlemen?
Okay. My, but it's grand having him here, eh, boys?
You bet it'll boom the camp. Ain't it so, Stevens?
Right you are. It's the grandest luck a new camp ever struck. Say, did you see him collar them little rags and dirt and things? What an eye. He just can't overlook a clue. Tain't in him.
That's so. And it wouldn't mean a thing to anybody else but him.
Boys, I ain't sorry now that he wasn't here to right start the child. This is a bigger thing by a long sight, yes, sir. More tangled up and scientific and intellectual.
I reckon we're all glad it turned out this way. Archie could have learnt something if he had had the sense to stand by and take notice of how the man works the system. But no, he went poking up into the chaparral above the cabin and just missed the whole thing.
It's true as gospel. I seen it myself. Well, Archie's young. He'll know better one of these days.
Say, boys, who do you reckon done it?
Oh, no, that's the question.
No one but young Hilliard here has had any talk with him. No one's had a quarrel with him. He cussed out anybody that tried to talk to him.
Well, there's one, though. Fetlock Jones. He's got a million reasons and rights to kill Flint Buckner, and it was just his plain duty to do it. But there's two things we can't get around. For one thing, he hasn't got the sand. And for another, he wasn't anywhere near the place when it happened.
Well, I know it. He was here in the billiard room with us when it happened.
Yeah, and was there all the time for an hour before it happened.
It's so. And lucky for him, too. He'd have been suspected in a minute if it hadn't been for that.
Here we are, boys. Now we'll find out the truth.
Gentlemen, I have inquired, and you have told me all you know about Flint Buckner, his character, conduct, and habits. It appears that the only person in the camp who had a killing grudge against him was my nephew. Do any of you gentlemen chance to know where the lad Fetlock Jones was at the time of the explosion?
In the billiard room of this house.
Ah, and had he just come in?
He'd been there all of an hour.
Ah. It is about how far might it be to the scene of the explosion?
All of a mile.
Ah, a mile. Well, it isn't much of an alibi, 'tis true, but...
By Jiminy, he's chain lightning.
The lad Jones's somewhat distant connection with the case having been disposed of, let us now call the eyewitnesses of the tragedy and listen to what they have to say. Here are the objects I picked up near the cabin. They tell a clear story. We have the longitude and the latitude, corrected for magnetic variation, and this gives us the exact location of the tragedy. We have the altitude, the temperature, and the degree of humidity prevailing, inestimably valuable since they enable us to estimate with precision the degree of influence which they would exercise upon the mood and disposition of the assassin at that time of night.
By George, but he's deep.
And now, let us ask these mute witnesses to speak to us. Here we have an empty linen shot bag. What is its message? This, that robbery was the motive, not revenge. What is its further message? This, that the assassin was of inferior intelligence. Shall we say light-witted or perhaps approaching that? No. How do we know this? Because a person of sound intelligence would not have proposed to rob the man Buckner, who never had much money with him. But the assassin might have been a stranger. Let the bag speak again. I take from it this article. It is a bit of silver-bearing quartz. It is peculiar. Examine it, please. There is but one lode on this coast produces just that character and color of quartz, and that is a lode which crops out for nearly 2 miles on a stretch, and in my opinion is destined at no distant day to confer upon its locality a globe-girdling celebrity, and upon its 200 owners riches beyond the dream of avarice. Name that lode, please.
The Consolidated Christian Science and Marianne. That's
Yes, it's all very nice. We perceive, then, that 3 facts are established. To wit, the assassin was approximately light-witted. He was not a stranger. His motive was robbery, not revenge. Let us proceed. I hold in my hand a small fragment of fuse with the recent smell of fire upon it. What is its testimony? Taken with the corroborative evidence of the quartz, it reveals to us that the assassin was a miner. What does it tell us further? This, gentlemen, that the assassination was consummated by means of an explosive. What else does it say? This, that the explosive was located against the side of the cabin nearest the road, the front side, for within 6 feet of that spot I found it. I hold in my fingers a burnt Swedish match, the kind one rubs on a safety box. Found it in the road, 622 feet from the abolished cabin. What does it say? This, that the train was fired from that point. What further does it tell us? This, that the assassin was left-handed. How do I know this? I should not be able to explain to you, gentlemen, how I know it, the signs being so subtle that only long experience and deep study can enable one to detect them. But the signs are here, and they are reinforced by a fact which you must have often noticed in the great detective narratives, that all assassins are left-handed.
By Jackson, that's so. Blamed if I ever thought of it before.
Nor I. Oh, there can't anything escape him. Look at his eye.
Gentlemen, distant as the murderer was from his doomed victim, he did not wholly escape injury. This fragment of wood, which I now exhibit to you, struck him. It drew blood. Wherever he is, he bears the telltale mark. I picked it up where he stood when he fired the fatal train, and there stands the assassin!
What? No!
Sammy Hillier?
Oh, hell no. Him? It's pure foolishness.
Take care, gentlemen. Be not hasty. Observe, he has the blood mark upon his brow.
Don't! Oh, don't! I never did it. I give my word I never did it. The way I got this hurt on my forehead was...
Arrest him, Constable. I will swear out the warrant.
Oh, Archie, don't let them do it. It would kill Mother. You know how I get the hurt. Tell them. Save me, Archie. Save me.
Yes, I'll save you. Don't be afraid. Never mind how he got the hurt. It hasn't anything to do with this case and isn't of any consequence.
God bless you. Archie, you're a true friend.
Go in, boy, and play him a knockdown flush to their 2-pair and a jack.
I will ask Tom Jeffries to stand by that door yonder, and Constable Harris stand by the other one here, and not let anyone leave the room.
Said and done. Go on, old man.
The criminal is present, I believe, and I will show him to you before long, in case I'm right in my guess. Now I will tell you all about the tragedy from start to finish. The motive wasn't robbery. It was revenge. The murderer wasn't light-witted. He didn't stand 622 feet away. He didn't get hit with a piece of wood. He didn't place the explosive against the cabin. And he didn't bring a shot bag with him. And he wasn't left-handed. With the exception of these errors, the distinguished guest's statement of the case is substantially correct. I also have some witnesses, and I will presently tell you where you can find some more. Now, here is a coarse wire. You notice it has a smooth coating of melted tallow on it. And here's a candle which is burned halfway down. The remaining half of it has marks cut about 1 inch apart. Soon I will tell you where I found these things. I will now put aside reasonings, guesses, the impressive hitchings of odds and ends of clues together, and the other showy theatricals of the detective trade. and tell you in a plain, straightforward way just how this dismal thing happened.
He's got it, boys. Now just listen to him. Take it away, Archie.
Well, the assassin studied out his plan with a good deal of pains. It was a good plan, very ingenious, and showed an intelligent mind, not a feeble one. It was a plan which was well calculated to ward off all suspicion from its inventor. In the first place, he marked the candle into spaces an inch apart, lit it, and timed it. He found it took 3 hours to burn 4 inches of it. I tried it myself for half an hour a while ago upstairs here while the inquiry into Flint Buckner's character and ways was being conducted in this room. And I arrived in that way at the rate of a candle's consumption when sheltered from the wind. Having proved his trial candle's rate, he blew it out. I've already shown it to you. And put his inch marks on a fresh one. He put the fresh one into a tin candlestick. Then, at the 5-hour mark, he bored a hole through the candle with a red-hot wire. I've already shown you the wire with the smooth coat of tallow on it. Tallow that had been melted and had cooled.
Well, well, what do you think of that, lads?
But what does it mean?
I will tell you. With labor, very hard labor, I should say, he struggled up through stiff chaparral that closed the steep hillside back of Flint Buckner's place, tugging an empty flour barrel with him. He placed it in that absolutely secure hiding place, and in the bottom of it, he set the candlestick.
Ah, I think I see where you're going.
Then he measured off about 35 feet of fuse, the barrel's distance from the back of the cabin. He bored a hole in the side of the barrel. Now here's the large gimlet he did it with. He went on and finished his work. And when it was done, one end of the fuse was in Buckner's cabin, and the other end, with a notch chipped in it to expose the powder, was in the hole in the candle. Timed to blow the place up at 1 o'clock this morning. Provided the candle was lit about 8 o'clock yesterday evening, which I'm betting it was. And provided there was an explosive in the cabin and connected with that end of the fuse, which I'm also betting there was, though I can't prove it. Boys, the barrel is there in the chaparral. The candle's remains are in the tin stick. The burnout fuse is in the gimlet hole. The other end is down the hill where the late cabin stood. I saw them all an hour or two ago when the professor here was measuring off unimplicated vacancies and collecting relics that had anything to do with the case.
Dang him. That's why he was snooping around the chaparral instead of picking up points of the professor's game. Looky here, he ain't no fool, boys.
No, sir. Why, great Scott!
While we were out yonder an hour or two ago, the owner of the gimlet and the trial candle took them from a place where he had concealed them. It was not a good place, and carried them to what he probably thought was a better one, 200 yards up in the pine woods, and hid them there, covering them over with pine needles. It was there that I found them. The gimlet exactly fits the hole in the barrel, and now I'm...
We have had a very pretty fairy tale, gentlemen. Oh, very pretty indeed. Now, I would like to ask this young man a question or two.
Uh-oh, I'm afraid Archie's gonna catch it now.
Let us proceed to examine into this fairy tale in a consecutive and orderly way, by geometrical progression, so to speak, linking detail to detail in a steadily advancing and remorselessly consistent and unassailable march upon this tinsel toy fortress of error, the dream fabric of a callow imagination. To begin with, young sir, I desire to ask you but 3 questions at present. At present, did I understand you to say it was your opinion that the supposititious candle was lighted at about 8 o'clock yesterday evening?
Yes, sir. About 8.
Could you say exactly 8?
Well, no, I couldn't be that exact.
If a person had been passing along there just about that time, he would have been almost sure to encounter that assassin, do you think?
Yes, I should think so.
Thank you. That is all for the present. I say all for the present.
Darn him! He's laying for Archie.
It's so. I don't like the look of it.
I was along there myself at 8:30. No, about 9.
Oh, indeed. Oh, this is interesting. This is very interesting. Perhaps you encountered the assassin?
No, I encountered no one.
Then, if you will excuse the remark, I do not quite see the relevancy of the information.
It has none. At present. I say it has none. At present. I did not encounter the assassin, but I am on his track. I'm sure, for I believe he is in this room. I will ask you all to pass one by one in front of me, here, where there's a good light.
Ridiculous.
So I can see your feet.
Assassins appear to be scarce this evening.
This is the assassin?
No.
What? Crazy. This is serious. It strikes at an innocent life. Innocent beyond suspicion. Innocent beyond peradventure. Hear me prove it. Observe how simple a fact can brush out of existence this witless lie. Listen, my friends, that lad was never out of my sight yesterday evening at any time.
I knew there was another one.
I beg your pardon, what are you doing?
I'm sniffing your feet.
Stop.
Aha! You were with him. You were not 50 steps from him when he lit the candle that by and by fired the powder. And what is more, you furnished the matches yourself.
This is insanity.
Here is one of them.
Oh, dear.
A charred match. I found it in the barrel. And there's another one there.
Yes, and you put them there yourself.
It is wax. A breed unknown to this camp. I am ready to be searched for the box. Are you? We're waiting for your decision.
I refuse to be searched.
That settles it. He's Archie's meat.
Boys, in my opinion, that we should confer upon the assassin a vote of thanks for removing Flint Buckner and let him go.
Yes, that's right.
I think so.
I say, boys, hold on. It ain't right. If they hear about this back east, they'll make it a scandal and there'll be no end of trouble. I think we have to arrest Fetlock Jones and put him on trial.
No, it's no use. I don't want any jail. I don't want any trial. I've had all the hard luck I want and all the miseries. Hang me now, let me out. It would all come out anyway. There couldn't anything save me. He has told it all, just as if he'd been with me and seen it. I don't know how he found out. And you'll find the barrel and things, and then I wouldn't have any chance anymore. I killed him, and you'd have done it too, if he treated you like a dog. Are you only a boy, and weak, and poor, and not a friend to help?
It served him damn well right. Looky here, boys.
Did your uncle know what you was up to?
No, he didn't.
Did he give you the matches, sure enough?
Yes, he did. But he didn't know what I wanted them for.
When you was out on such a business as that, how did you venture to risk having him along? And him, a detective. How's that?
Well, I know about detectives on account of having them in the family. And, well, if you don't want them to find out about a thing, it's best to have them around when you do it.
Buckner was buried the next day.
Well now, that's one scalawag nobody will miss. And glad he's good and buried. I reckon we ought to see about the lad now in the jail.
Poor chap. I hope they get him off at trial. He done us all a favor.
Hey, boys, guess what? Fetlock Jones done broke out in the middle of the night and done escaped. Nobody's seen him since.
Well, I ain't sorry. Good luck to him.
Ain't none of us going to search for him. No, sir. The camp is not interested.
Let his uncle track him down if he likes. It's in his line.
Enjoyed our evening of Sherlock Holmes pastiches. This program will be repeated on Sunday at 2 p.m. We invite you to tune in if you'd like to hear these pastiches again, or tell your friends who may have missed this evening's performance. Please tune in tomorrow evening or on Saturday afternoon when WEDG will present the second half of this two-part program with two more Sherlock Holmes pastiches, The Unique Hamlet by Vincent Starrett, and Yes, Virginia, There Is a Sherlock Holmes by Derek Belanger. Thank you for listening, and WEDG bids you good evening.
Just like Sherlock, huh?
Yeah. Come on, I got one.
Hey, Liz, I like that new shade of lipstick you've got. That's a new one, isn't it?
It is. It's called Scarlet Skein.
Ooh.
Sammy gave it to me last night.
What'd you give him?
Honestly, you men.
What's wrong with us, man?
You got time?
Mother never teaching no manners.
I never had no mother. We was too poor.
Well, I'm out of here. It's gonna be a hot night in the old town tonight.
Woo! Yeah, Andrew's got a hot date. The fair sex is his department.
He has experience of women of many nations and 3 separate continents.
I wonder which continents those would be.
Undiscovered ones.
Don't you worry about me. I know when a woman can't resist me.
Yeah, it's when she spits in his eye.
Oh, you would know, Elizabeth.
Hey, come on, everyone, let's go.
Yeah.
Hey, hang on a minute. Let me get my hat. Okay, so who's gonna go? Who's everybody? Well, I guess it's just me, myself, and my shadow.